Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive into, well, the human condition, I guess you could say.
Yeah, today's batch of sources got me thinking a lot about what it even means to be human these days.
Seriously, from cyborgs to safe zones, ancient philosophers to modern news, it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. Okay, so first up, let's talk about this article about the Vegas sphere.
Oh, yeah, the one with the Aura robot?
Right, apparently this thing is so realistic that one kid who saw it thought people could actually fall in love with it.
Wow, that reminds me of that essay we have, Falling in Love with Machines,
Exactly. Like, could we really get to a point where AI is that advanced?
where it blurs the lines between, like, human connection and something totally different.
Yeah, it's wild. And the essay actually argues that technology is already changing how we think about love and relationships.
Right, think about, like, virtual companions or even dating apps. Those are already pretty common.
And they're only getting more sophisticated.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we're already on that path, towards forming these deep bonds with AI.
It's almost like science fiction is becoming reality.
Speaking of blurring lines, there's this other essay from Human to Cyborg that I thought was really crispy.
Oh yeah, what did you think about that one?
Well, it argues that art has actually played a huge role in how we view technology, like integrated into our bodies.
I mean, you think about how movies and TV shows have portrayed cyborgs over the years.
Right. It's gone from these scary, monstrous figures to like sleek, almost desirable beings.
Yeah, like we've slowly been conditioned to accept this idea of merging with machines.
And the essay even points out how that shift has paved the way for real-world advancements, like prosthetics, implantable devices.
It's true, things that were once pure science fiction are now just part of life.
Exactly. So it really makes you think about where we'll be in like 20 or 30 years.
Right, will we even be able to tell the difference between human and machine at some point?
It's a question that takes us right to the heart of what we're talking about today.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a second and talk about something a bit more grounded, this whole debate in Scotland about creating abortion-safe zones.
I read about that. It's a really tough situation trying to balance individual rights with protecting vulnerable people.
Yeah, the Legislating for Influence article lays out the arguments really well.
Right. You have the right to free speech and assembly, but then you also have women who need access to health care without feeling harassed.
And then there's this idea of legislating for influence that the article brings up.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. It's like saying laws can actually shape social norms and influence behavior.
Not just punish bad behavior, but actually, change how people act.
Which raises the question, can you really do that without limiting personal freedoms?
Where's the line?
Exactly. It's a really tough question. I don't know if there's an easy answer.
Well, whatever your stance is, I think it's important to have these open conversations.
For sure, and to remember that there are real people on both sides of the issue.
Okay, so let's bring in a little philosophical wisdom here to maybe shed some light on all of this.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So this quote from David Hume really got me thinking. He said, "When my perceptions are removed for any time, as by sound sleep so long, am I insensible of myself, and may truly be said not to exist."
Whoa. Okay, that's deep. What do you make of that?
I mean, it makes you question the very nature of the self, right?
Yeah, like, are we just the sum of our perceptions and experiences?
And if those are taken away, do we even really exist in any meaningful way?
It's a trippy thought, and it connects back to that whole human-machine thing we were talking about.
Right, like what happens to our sense of self when our experiences are increasingly mediated by technology?
Like, if our memories, relationships, even our thoughts are shaped by algorithms, does that change who we are?
Yeah, it's a huge question, and I don't think there's a simple answer.
Definitely something we'll be grappling with for a long time.
Okay, well, let's move on to some actual news now that touches on this idea of human versus machine.
Sounds good. What do you have? So we've got some news about Andrea Mitchell, that longtime journalist from MSNBC.
Oh, wow. Yeah, she's been around forever. What happened?
Well, she's decided to step back from her role at the network.
It feels like the end of an era. Honestly, she's always been such a sharp, insightful reporter.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see what she does next, though, with all her experience.
Maybe she'll write a book or take on some other project in the media world.
Yeah, who knows, but I bet it'll be fascinating.
Speaking of veterans making waves, there's Tom Holman, the former ICE director, in the news again.
Oh, yeah? What did he say this time?
He's been pretty outspoken about his opposition to NGOs teaching immigrants their rights.
Yeah, I read about that. It seems like he's implying they're encouraging illegal activity or something.
Right, but the sources make it clear that's not what's happening at all.
Yeah, these NGOs are just providing information about legal rights, things immigrants are entitled to under U.S. law.
Exactly. It's a pretty basic principle of our justice system.
It makes you wonder, though, about the whole political climate surrounding immigration these days.
Yeah, are certain groups trying to demonize people who are simply trying to help immigrants?
It's a good question, and it's a stark contrast to some of the philosophical ideas we were discussing earlier.
Right, like the idea of expanding our circle of concern and recognizing the shared humanity of all people.
Exactly, regardless of their background or where they come from.
It reminds me of that Albert Camus quote I came across. He said, "I continue to believe that this world has no ultimate meaning, but I know that something in it has meaning, and that is man. because he is the only creature to insist on having one.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. It really speaks to our need to find meaning in a world that can often feel meaningless.
Right, like we have this innate drive to seek purpose and make sense of things.
And that's what ultimately drives us forward, even when things are tough.
So how do we reconcile that desire for meaning with the reality of a world that can often feel chaotic and absurd?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Maybe it's about finding meaning in the everyday in our relationships, our work, our pursuit of knowledge.
I think you're onto something there. It's about connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Whether that's our community, our planet, or even just the pursuit of some greater good.
And recognizing that even in a world that feels increasingly divided, we're all interconnected and interdependent.
That's a beautiful thought. And it brings us back to this idea of the human condition.
The thread that ties everything together.
Exactly. From AI and cyborgs to ethical debates about safe zones and immigration.
It's all about what it means to be human in a world that's changing faster than ever.
And as we navigate those changes, it's important to remember that we have the power to shape the future.
Our choices matter, our actions have consequences, and our voices can make a difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This whole conversation reminds me of something else we read today about Schopenhauer's critique of reading.
Oh, right. He thought it could be a substitute for thinking for oneself sometimes.
Yeah, he said texts resist interpretation, like we need to actively engage with ideas, not just passively absorb them.
That's so true. It's about developing those critical thinking skills, be able to separate fact from fiction and form our own opinions.
Exactly. Knowledge is a process, not a destination.
And even the most complex ideas can be grasped if we approach them with an open mind and a willingness to learn.
Speaking of expanding our worldview, there's this other article I thought we could discuss. It talks about this whole philosophical debate around empathy and the golden rule.
Oh, the idea that we should treat others as we want to be treated.
Yeah, exactly. But the article actually challenges that idea.
Really? How so?
Well, they say just putting yourself in someone else's shoes isn't enough to be truly ethical.
Interesting. I can see that.
Like it's more about expanding our circle of concern to include people who might be different from us.
Even if we can't totally relate to their experiences.
Right. It's about recognizing the worth and dignity of every single person.
No matter their background, their beliefs, or their circumstances.
It's a much more expansive view of morality than just focusing on ourselves.
It's like a call to action, almost a challenge to build a more just and compassionate world.
Speaking of calls to action, did you see that new publication on Chinese philosophy, Jiaohua? Chinese Ideas and Practices of Moral Transformation?
I did skim it. It looks fascinating how they focus on moral development through education and self-cultivation.
And the emphasis on community and tradition in shaping ethical behavior.
It's a good reminder that there are so many different paths to moral understanding.
And that wisdom can be found in cultures and traditions all over the world.
It all comes back to staying open to new ideas and perspectives.
And always striving to learn and grow, right?
Exactly. Knowledge is a journey, not a destination.
And we're all on that journey together.
Trying to make sense of the world and our place in it.
As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a quote that I think sums up what we talk about today.
Okay. I'm all ears.
It goes, "The task of creation is always unfinished. From every newly crafted thing, a new arrangement of meanings emerges, and from that new possibilities appear, new possibilities beget new questions, and something further must be created in response."
Wow, that's beautiful. It really speaks to the ever-changing nature of knowledge and the human spirit.
It reminds us that we are all creators constantly shaping the world around us.
And that the search for meaning and understanding never really ends.
So as you go about your day, remember to stay curious, stay engaged, and never lose that sense of wonder.
Keep asking questions, seeking answers, and trying to make the world a better place.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Been a great conversation. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.